Hey, what's good? The Infographics Show channel has a video called Why the US is Running Out of Jobs, which is interesting because apparently that's why the current administration is getting rid of all the immigrants, and yet jobs are still disappearing. So let's see what the Infographics Show has to say about the matter. Before we get into it, remember to go to coconutjustice.com to get you some clothes that I think would look good on you. Let's go. We've checked out Infographics Show a couple times on this channel, and you guys have a tendency to like them. I'm not sure which way they lean, left, right, in the middle. I have no idea. I like to collect information from everyone, left, right, center, and then I research, I ask around, and then I make a decision, and then we move on. So, to me, it doesn't really matter what information comes out. Just trying to learn is important. And keeping your mind open and not letting just one person tell you this is what we think, and all the brown kids are ruining everything, and blah blah blah. And there's a lot of you guys that fall for that mess. Again, let me reiterate: I am not after your money. I'm after my money. Let's go.
America is facing a crisis. Everywhere you look, the headlines talk about worker shortages and not enough people to keep the economy running. But what if the real danger isn't too few workers, but too little work? What if millions of Americans went searching for employment only to discover there is nothing available? On today's episode of the Infographics Show, we're asking why the U.S. might actually be running out of jobs and what that means for the future of work.
Okay, this is my thoughts. These are my thoughts. This is my opinion. In the 70s, the government decided to deindustrialize the United States. And the hope was that the United States was going to be the source of culture and the source of education and knowledge and all this stuff. But then they forgot to tell the people. The government forgot to invest in education. But then they still sent all these jobs. And this is happening whether you're in West Virginia, whether you're in a farmer in the middle of the country, or if you're in entertainment in LA. They've been outsourcing jobs since jobs were created. They have always tried to find cheap, if not free labor. They meaning people who have been consistently in power. And in this country, it's a certain complexion, blah, blah, blah. We all know, we all have heard about it. But my point is, with the deindustrialization of America and the lack of investment in education, with the exception of the haves, the people that have plenty of money, the people that live in the good neighborhoods, all that stuff, they don't see a problem with it because their kids are going to good schools and all that stuff. And they just forget about everyone else's kids. And so when you have a population that reads at about a 6th grade level, and that's the white people, the normal or the average Trump supporter reads at a 6th grade level. So when the people with the complexion that matches the people that are in power are struggling, what do you think it's going to happen to the people that don't look like them, the people that don't get the hookups, the people that don't get to go to the good schools, right? So all of that is happening, and we have a nation full of people that are willing to be told what to do. And so they just want to get up, they go to work, they go home, right? But then what happens when all of those jobs, the ones, the factory jobs and the clerical jobs and the stuff the stuff that we're losing to AI and the stuff that we've been losing to technology. Um, I have a lot of friends in the LA area that LA is in shambles, and yet the people that are the director level, they're still going out to different countries because their teams are in those countries. You guys need to stop arguing and bitching and complaining about picking apples and strawberries and stuff. You guys need to start taking a look at these bigger jobs, the animators, the special effects people, the 3D modelers, the coders, the programmers, everything that's happening in Silicon Valley. All that stuff is being outsourced. Either literally going to a different country, or they're going and picking people up from those countries and bringing them here. And then, you know, that's, to me, that's what it is. It's a lack of investment in our own people, because there's a lot of people who have been convinced of some silliness, and instead of giving money or improving education, investing in education, they're convinced that, you know, black and brown people are taking jobs and blah 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 blah. You folks that think that way need to research just a little bit. Listen to literally anyone else and see that these jobs are leaving, and it's not our fault. That's not our fault. Like black and brown people aren't. We don't have mega corporations that hire illegals to take your jobs. No, it's white folks. We don't have, you know, we're struggling to find money and jobs and all that stuff to feed our kids. And now that you are struggling to feed your kids, now you listen to someone and that's pointing their finger at us. And it's not us. This is not. This is the rich and powerful. This is the rich and powerful doing whatever the hell they want, and you guys, just because they have a little bit of money, there's a lot of you guys that just take that stuff for what, at face value, and you shouldn't. You really shouldn't. You really shouldn't. The people that are in charge don't have your best interest in mind, and I will continue to say that until some of you guys start to see it. It's not our fault. How is, and we're going to get back to the video, but how is illegal people taking jobs the fault of the people who don't own the companies to offer those jobs? See what I'm saying?
This economy is generally doing well these days. The job market in the U.S. has people worried. The job growth estimate has been downgraded, with totals for May and June being revised down by a combined 258,000 jobs. Employers added 250,000 fewer jobs in the second quarter of 2025 than they did in the last. In fact, some analysts are saying that this is the worst job growth observed in decades outside of a recession. A lot of people will say,
you guys remember when these job numbers came out and Trump hated them, and then so he fired the one dude, and then he went and got another one, and that dude, or no, I think it was a lady he fired, and then the next guy stepped up and gave him even worse numbers. That's what I'm saying. Like, you guys got to be careful who you pay attention to. Like, the president is a known liar. He won't go to court. He won't, swear on the Bible or anything like that, because he's a perjurer.
well, of course we're seeing fewer jobs. The AI revolution is here. But it's actually not that simple. Artificial intelligence is playing a part in the shrinking job market. But it doesn't tell the full story. So why is the US running out of jobs? Let's start with one of the simpler explanations. The rise of remote work has changed the playing field for American workers.
Well,
The 2000 US Census
this is
found
like
that just
what he's about
3.2%.
to get into. This is all the Fiverr and all that stuff. Back when I first kind of started this channel, I was doing tutorials and stuff, creative tutorials and stuff like that. And I was very salty with the fact that Fiverr was around because it was basically taking food out of my mouth, out of my community's mouth, my artistic community. Because we need to make a certain amount of money to survive, to feed our kids, to pay the rent, all that stuff. But when you have people that live in a society whose cost of living isn't as high as ours, and they're like, yeah, we'll do that for $5, $10, $5, even if it's $5 an hour, $10 an hour. Um, but then again, when I started realizing that the deindustrialization of America played a big role in this, now, okay, so now we're supposed to be the CEOs of our own companies and stuff like that. No, we're going to outsource too. We get to do it the same way that the big guys do. Those big studios that go to, India and China. And some of them, we found out that some of them go to North Korea too. And there's a lot of you guys that just continue to bitch and complain that there's people from South America, Central America that are coming for jobs. Those jobs don't pay anything. The jobs that we're about to talk about now, these guys pay real nice money. But you guys are happy arguing and complaining about, $2 jobs, $3 an hour jobs. I'm talking about the jobs that pay $100, $200, $300,000 a year. And you guys are bitching and complaining about picking strawberries.
American workers, about 4.2 million people worked from home. By 2020, before the pandemic, that number had more than doubled to 7.3% of the labor force, or around 11 million people. Then the lockdown hit and remote work exploded. In only a year, the share of Americans working from home soared to 17.9% by 2021. While some did eventually transition back to part-time or full-time office jobs, many never did. Since the end of 2023, 13.8% of workers are still fully remote. Now, for tax and other reasons, some companies can't hire remote workers outside of the U.S., but a fair amount can, leading to U.S. workers suddenly competing not only with similarly skilled workers around the country, but similarly skilled workers globally. According to Revelio Labs, global companies with U.S. headquarters have been hiring international workers at a much faster rate than domestic workers. Between 2019 and 2025,
now I just get to sit back and just say, told you so, told you so, told you so, told you so.
the number of onshore workers grew by 16.7%, but offshore workers grew by 32%, nearly twice as fast. And these aren't low-wage roles. Huge corporations like Salesforce are laying off high-paid staff in their Bay Area offices in favor of international talent, while only 5% of...
Told you so. I told you so. Look in the library of this playlist and find one that talks about, I forget what was it called, but it has something to do with a H-1B visa situation out here and how American workers, long story short, I used to be a software designer, bit of a programmer, not a bit, I was a programmer, and I got laid off, and then come to find out that it wasn't just me. It was a whole bunch of people that got laid off, and it was because these contract companies would go out and find contractors not in the United States. And we find out that for the price of one American, these corporations can find 3 imports, and they get their job, and then they get mistreated, and then if they say anything, then they lose their job and get kicked out of the country. That's not me. That's you go out there and you research and you'll see I'm not lying. So whether it be someone from the South America, Central America coming to take strawberries and apples jobs, we have people from, China, India, all those folks are coming here. Or if you're in animation and stuff like that, like it's mind boggling how how much work is getting sent out of the country, whether it's creative, whether it's physical. It's wild.
Companies were open to hiring international remote workers in 2019. By the end of 2020, that number had jumped to 10%. In 2022, companies seemed even more willing to hire globally, with a State of Global Hiring report finding that 64% of U.S. companies were either expanding international hiring or planning to. This leaves U.S. workers either shut out of those markets entirely or forced to compete fiercely for what's left.
And add the fact that we know that there have been certain, I don't even know, like, apps is the wrong word, but there's coding that goes through and takes certain bits of information off of someone's resume, whether it be their name, whether it be whatever, and then they just hiring managers, I guess, they find any reason to not hire you. And, you know, added to the fact that all of these jobs are leaving America. Black and brown people have been telling you that these jobs just don't exist. And now that it's starting to tap into white folks, now white folks are starting to pay attention. And the powers that be are telling white folks that it's the brown kids that are taking all the jobs. And you guys are falling for it. That's the sad part.
Increasingly, company job postings aren't aimed at Americans, or at least not Americans alone.
Told you.
And as if things couldn't get worse,
Here we
some
go.
other workers are being replaced with, well, no one whatsoever.
Robots.
Well, except ChatGPT, or Claude, or Cursor. The rise of artificial intelligence, and specifically LLMs, or large language models, is on the verge of making some jobs obsolete. According to Coursera, entry-level roles are the most at risk, especially in manufacturing, clerical work, transportation, retail, and sales.
Just last week, or was it on Monday? I think it was on Monday, I released a video called White Collar Bloodbath. And we talked about this. We talked about how AI is going to do away with, yeah, here we go. Clerical. The other video was more clerical, more like entry-level jobs. All that stuff is going to be gone. So you're going to have a bunch of kids going to school, and a lot of kids ask me about going to school and stuff like that. That's a discussion for a different video. But all these kids are going to school, going into debt because school is way too expensive. And we refuse to invest in education, which to me is the key to getting out of all this silliness that we are experiencing today. We refuse to do that. And then we wonder why we're in the situation where we are. All these jobs are are leaving America because corporations are looking out for their own interest. Just that simple. Just that simple.
You might still need a senior developer or experienced lawyer to oversee what an LLM is spitting out, but you don't need as many paralegals or junior coders to help them. However, many economists and tech experts warn that this could trigger a long-term labor crisis. After all, senior developers start off as juniors, and future lawyers often gain experience as paralegals. But if a team of 5 junior staff led by a veteran is replaced with one veteran using an AI assistant, where does the next generation get the training they need to become tomorrow's experts?
Exactly.
Some people have probably already seen AI take their jobs, though most companies are hesitant to say so openly. In the spring of 2025, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella announced in April that 30% of the company's code was now being written by AI, and then in May fired 6,000 employees. Just to really ram home the point, another 9,000 were let go in July, equating to 4% of the company's international workforce, which would appear to be related events. In fact, almost all of the tech giants, including Google, Meta, and Amazon, have conducted massive layoffs since 2022. Meta laid off 3,600 people in the beginning of 2025, and companies like IBM cut 8,000 jobs in HR and other departments as it increasingly uses AI to complete administrative tasks. And the problem doesn't just lie in tech. In June 2023, IKEA, in an effort to make its customer service as confusing as its assembly line instructions, said they would start phasing out their customer service agents in favor of an AI bot named Billy. Duolingo is one of the few companies that seems openly proud.
Billy. Yeah. Yeah. And that one, the customer service part, I actually do enjoy. There's a couple websites that I use that have AI help center, whatever, and you can chat with the AI. I'm not gonna lie, that part you get to an answer a lot faster that way. Um, but what you gonna do with all those customer service reps that don't have jobs?
Firing workers in favor of AI. They made headlines in January 2024 when they announced they'll let go 10% of their contractors in favor of using AI to translate content. And that's why nobody likes the owl. We should point out that some industry experts and commentators actually doubt that these layoffs are because of AI replacing human workers. Menlo Ventures' Didi Das says layoffs are happening because the big tech companies need huge amounts of cash for investments in AI data centers. Tech advisor and entrepreneur Wes Roth says this isn't about AI replacing humans yet, it's about restructuring to fund AI initiatives. However, even if this is the case, it still means that some of the world's biggest companies are betting more on an AI-led future rather than on their own experienced workers. That's bad news for future generations, and some of them already sense it. There's always a slight gap between unemployment rates for all college graduates and those for recent college graduates, but at the beginning of 2025, the gap has been getting unnaturally big for an economy not in recession. According to the New York Federal Reserve, labor conditions have deteriorated noticeably. While the unemployment rate for all college graduates is 2.7%, the rate for recent college graduates, 22 to 27 years old, was 5.8% in March 2025. That is higher than the general unemployment rate of 4.2%. It doesn't even matter how good of a school you go to. Harvard Business School told the Wall Street Journal that 23% of its MBAs actively looking for work were still unemployed 3 months later. While that may not sound like a long time, it is surprising for graduates coming from one of the most prestigious universities in the world. Many tech experts have justifiable questions about how useful LLMs are without human oversight, and if they can really outright replace human labor. But at the end of the day, if managers are convinced AI can do a better job, regardless of how true it is or not, people are going to get fired. Perhaps that's why many people are now encouraging kids to learn a trade instead of getting a degree for a white-collar job. That way, they can walk away with less student debt and more practical real-world skills that would be harder for something like AI to replace. But skilled trades and manufacturing jobs have been facing their own challenges for some time and may face more in the future. You might have noticed we mentioned manufacturing as one of the industries that'll be affected by AI. For skilled trades, there is in fact a labor shortage at the moment, but learning a trade may not be enough to grab a job in construction in the coming years. According to Just Construction Specialist Recruitment, the best
yeah, so this is always what happens. Something finds success, something gets popular, and then everyone rushes and does that. The trades is a really good option for a lot of people, but then it's gonna end up being the same thing. Like how an area doesn't need 87 plumbers if 15 will do, you know? So then you're going to have same thing happened with the creative industry. Back when I was younger and I went to school for 3D animation and filmmaking and stuff like that, it was still kind of young. Not a lot of jobs were being had. But then like you see the commercials and then you talk to the recruiters of that school and everything, and they get you sold on this really cool thing, and you're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then you realize that there's like, you're in class with like 200 other people and there's only like 5 jobs available. That's what's going to happen. Electricians, that's kind of what happens. I hung out with a bunch of police officers and firemen, bowling and stuff like that in Chicago, and it was tough for them to get into the police department. and even the fire department. You had to jump through hoops and all kinds of stuff just because there was so many people trying to do that.
Contractors are no longer just hiring based on tools in the belt. They're hiring based on tech fluency. Tools like layout robots, drywall tapers, used to handle repetitive taping and mudding, and rebar tying machines are already common on job sites in the US and UK. The prevalence of automation and robots on construction sites, as well as in other trades like plumbing and electrical work, are only expected to increase in the future. And so even though skilled trades are likely among the last jobs that will be fully replaced by robots, the kinds of skills a tradesman requires are going to change very fast soon. And they'll require a lot more training and education, one most people can't afford. Not to mention, even those trades are still subject to increasing automation, something that has profound effect on both jobs and wages, with a surprising statistic you'll hear about in the next section. Because despite multiple politicians' promises to bring manufacturing jobs back to the US, this mass reversal of job outsourcing has never really materialized.
Right.
Jobs were outsourced in the first place because of lower labor costs abroad, as well as the US's growing deficit with major manufacturing countries. The Economic Policy Institute estimated that a growing trade deficit with China cost 3.7 million US jobs between 2001 and 2018. Even if the US raised import costs and cut domestic wages enough to make factory workers competitive with cheap foreign labor, it still wouldn't solve the problem. Outsourcing might have taken away US manufacturing jobs, but now something else has replaced them entirely: automation. See, manufacturing output in the US continues to be near their peak, with 2025 levels just 5.5% below the country's all-time high in 2007, when a huge chunk of manufacturing jobs had already disappeared. In 1979, at the peak of manufacturing employment, 22% of the non-farm workforce in the US was working in manufacturing, a total of 19.5 million workers. In 2023, that number stood at 12 million workers, or just 8.3% of the non-farm workforce. Meanwhile, according to the Brookings Institution, the manufacturing sector still generates $2.9 trillion for the US economy, with output rising fast during the 1980s and 1990s. At the same time,
And that's when robots and automation and everything started happening. This is right in this time frame, in the 70s and even getting into the 80s, was when they made the decision to deindustrialize the United States. And again, they forgot to tell everybody. So that's why I think they probably purposely did that, so you guys wouldn't freak out that these jobs are leaving. Um, but yeah, that's right around the time automation, computers, and all this stuff started happening. And when your main focus is payouts and giving money to your investors, that's what's going to happen. It's going to happen every single time. There's no investors that are going to say, you know what, you should spend a little more money. No, they don't. They say, here's some money. Go find help as cheap as possible. Here's a bunch of websites. Here's a bunch of things that you can go and find getting your work done somewhere else. Right? It's cheaper. Nobody wants to pay American prices because it's expensive. But imagine living here and people not paying you your fair wage. All these jobs are leaving.
labor in the sector was quickly falling. And today, even though the number of manufacturing jobs is smaller than ever, the US was still the world's third largest steel producer in 2020. It was also the second largest automaker and largest aerospace exporter in 2021. Overall, the country was second worldwide in terms of
And pay attention, when you buy any Apple product, it says designed in Cupertino. But it wasn't made here. Everything is made somewhere else. Everything is made somewhere else.
manufacturing power, producing 16% of global output, coming in only behind China, which it should be mentioned has over 4 times the US population. Because most of the work has been taken over by machines for decades now. MIT economist and professor Darren Acemoglu found that between 1990 and 2007, adding just 1 robot per 1,000 workers reduced the employment-to-population ratio by 0.2% and lowered wages by 0.4%. Why would your boss pay someone when they could just hire a robot that never asks about health benefits or having food? This translates to each robot doing the work of roughly
Needing breaks and
3.3 workers.
vacation days.
Not to mention, manufacturers can't even fill the job openings they have now. Consultancy firm Deloitte teamed up with the Manufacturing Institute in 2024 to survey more than 200 manufacturing companies on what their major challenges are. Over 65% of the companies surveyed listed hiring and retaining workers as their #1 challenge. That's not even mentioning the fact that many manufacturing workers are relatively old, meaning a wave of retirements is increasingly sweeping the sector. It's predicted that manufacturing will need 3.8 million extra workers by 2033, but up to 1.9 million of these jobs could go unfilled if workforce challenges are not addressed. But due to automation, only 2 in 5 manufacturing jobs these days are actually involved in making stuff at all, meaning 3 out of 5 jobs mostly require a college degree, as they're in design, engineering, research, development, sales, and finance, to name a few. The very things that many big tech firms believe will be replaced by AI. Carolyn Lee, president and executive director of the Manufacturing Institute, puts the number of manufacturing jobs that require at least a bachelor's degree at roughly half of all the current open positions. And that percentage is expected to increase in the future as manufacturing becomes more advanced and high-tech. It's part of a broader transition toward an economy where humans oversee machines rather than operate them or compete against them. But what about in-person or at least customer-facing service jobs? Customer service, retail jobs, food service, taxi, and Uber drivers. They are all gone. The emergence of chatbots and customer service agents entirely powered by AI is increasingly making customer service jobs a relic of the past. One McKinsey study found that AI-powered chatbots reduce operational support costs by 30%. The unspoken part of that study is costs are reduced because people are fired. Giant companies like Lyft and Bank of America have introduced their own AI assistants or are using services like Claude AI to handle customer service. Lyft found that replacing human agents with Claude reduced resolution times by 87%. Meanwhile, Bank of America's Erica chatbot has handled over 1.5 billion customer service interactions. Self-service kiosks at retail stores and fast food chains, in addition to self-service checkout counters in supermarkets and big box stores, are decreasing the need for customer-facing service.
Fast food restaurants and all that stuff, like McDonald's has, whether or not you like it, I don't know. Sometimes I don't want to talk to anybody. And sometimes someone is having a bad day and they hand you your fries with a long face and stuff like that. Whatever. Fast food restaurants, there's slowly but surely they're getting to that point where you walk up to the kiosk, you punch the pictures that you want, you run your credit card, and you're off and running. No muss, no fuss, and they're going to pitch it to you in that way. It's so easy. It's so seamless and all that stuff. Meanwhile, that entire neighborhood is in shambles because all the jobs are gone.
As well. According to RestroWorks, the number of restaurant kiosks installed worldwide between 2021 and 2023 increased by 43%, reaching 350,000 installations, over 1/5 of them in the United States. By 2028, the number of kiosks is projected to double to 700,000 units internationally. In fact, according to Oysterlink, 30% of fast food locations in the U.S. already use self-service kiosks in 2025.
Told you.
And that number is expected to increase to 50% by 2026. Workers at fast food chains like McDonald's, Burger King, and KFC are understandably nervous about this new tech coming for their jobs. One study by Cornerstone Capital Group found that up to 1.5 million fast food jobs could be replaced by 2025 because of the kiosks. But as of August 2025, the swaths of job losses haven't really materialized in the way that people thought. Fast food employees have been mostly shuffled around to other roles. But considering that the surge in this tech's use has been relatively recent, anxieties remain about the future. As far as taxi drivers or even truckers go, the coming years are looking pretty grim for them as well. Companies like Waymo have already rolled out fully automated robo-taxis to shuttle people around. A white paper on autonomous driving by the World Economic Forum predicts that by 2035, fleets of robo-taxis will be operating in anywhere from 40 to 80 cities, mostly within the US and China. These driverless vehicles are also set to transform the entire sector of trucking and logistics. The same paper estimates that by 2035, for mid-distance hub-to-hub routes, autonomous trucks will make up 29% of new purchases in the United States and around 26% in Europe. After all, robo-trucks, unlike truck drivers, don't need.
So they're taking white-collar jobs, they're taking blue-collar jobs, they're taking driver jobs. And the sad thing is they're going to convince you guys that it's brown people taking your jobs.
Stop to eat or get tired while driving. And most importantly for the companies that employ them, they don't need to get paid, after the initial purchase of the technology at least. Maybe all of this tech and automation is why some companies these days are experiencing rapid growth and increasing profits without hiring humans at all. In fact, many are letting their highly experienced employees go. According to Live Data Technologies, U.S. public companies have reduced their white-collar workforce by 3.5% between 2022 and 2025. The highest-performing companies are even more convinced of the philosophy, less is more. 20% of S&P 500 companies have shrunk between 2015 and 2025 while maintaining or even improving their financial status. While the future is creating more jobs in sectors like tech and green energy, these positions are fewer in number. They're also more specialized and often require advanced degrees or niche skills. For most people, that means high costs or student debt. So what happens when millions of Americans are willing to work, but the system just doesn't need them? Some argue that a laborless future is actually kinda great. Let AI and the robots do the work for us. All we need is a universal basic income to keep people at a decent standard of living, and we'll be set for life. We can spend more time with our friends and family, learning to make pasta from scratch, and finally becoming fluent in French.
Yeah, that'd be great, but unfortunately, the powers that be currently, when you try to do that, they call you lazy, they call you dumb, they do all the things. If they already don't want to give you money because they call you a freeloader, they don't want to give you health care because you're lazy, they don't want to give you food stamps, they don't want to give you any of that stuff because you're lazy, what do you think they're going to say about a universal basic income?
Just watching Netflix and playing Stardew Valley all day. Whatever
Yeah,
works.
good
But
luck.
universal basic income.
Yeah, look at they're this video, not necessarily just this video, but there's everyone who talks about universal basic income and all that stuff, they forget that you have people in the government that are complaining about guys sitting on the couch smoking weed playing video games. They're saying that already. They're saying you have to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. They're saying that you're lazy. They're saying that you're stupid. What do you think they're going to say when it's time to give money because they have ruined the system? Their greed has ruined the system. Now they have to give money because they have taken all the jobs. What do you think they're going to say when that day comes?
UBI has some major issues, mainly the unlikelihood it will ever be done. People who are against the implementation of UBI argue that it would disincentivize people to work. However, we're talking about a theoretically jobless future here, so that argument isn't as relevant. The more relevant issue is that instituting a UBI would be expensive. Mark Jaffe, visiting fellow at the California Policy Center, estimated that just a $2,000 UBI per head of household in the U.S. would cost around $2.3 trillion a year. Even if all federal, state, and local...
I don't know if he's going to get into it, but UBI is cool. It would be fun. UBI is cool. It would be...
consistent standard of living, and we'll be set for life. We can spend more time with our friends and family, learning to make pasta from scratch, and finally becoming fluent in French, or just watching Netflix and playing Stardew Valley all day. Whatever works. But Universal Basic Income, or UBI, has some major issues, mainly the unlikelihood it will ever be done. People who are against the implementation of UBI argue that it would disincentivize people to work. However, we're talking about a theoretically jobless future here, so that argument isn't as relevant. The more relevant issue is that instituting a UBI would be expensive. Mark Jaffe, visiting fellow at the California Policy Center, estimated that just a $2,000 UBI per head of household in the US would cost around $2.3 trillion a year. Even if all federal, state, and local assistance programs meant to help the poor were eliminated, as the UBI would theoretically be taking care of all those needs, that only eliminates $810 billion in funding. That means a relatively low UBI would still require an extra $1.4 trillion a year in the budget. And that is not even touching the fact that in a country where the average rent alone is about $2,100 per month, no household can survive on $2,000 per month. So to institute a UBI that would actually keep entire families afloat, never mind thriving, would require trillions the country doesn't have. And in a jobless future, the US will have even less of a budget.
And this is what's crazy is we won't have that because our economy is going to be basically shutting down because we don't have jobs, therefore we don't have money. And in a consumer-based economy, you need as many consumers as possible. That's why trickle down doesn't work. It's the system and trickle down economics. It just doesn't. It doesn't work. It it's a consumer-based economy. You need people to spend money for the economy to work. So yeah, this universal basic income, that'd be cool, but it's not going to generate as much money because people aren't out there working and doing their work. That's where the miscommunication is happening. You cannot continue to outsource jobs and expect your economy to be okay, because the people that are coming in and taking these jobs, they're spending that money on their family. They're spending that money, they're sending that money back home to wherever it is that they come from. Good, bad, and different, I don't care. If you offer me a job, I'm going to go work. If you offer me a job and I'm going to come work in Silicon Valley, even better. So prestigious. But then when I don't spend that money, there's going to be a little money spent here, groceries and stuff like that. But for the most part, the folks that come here to work, they send the money back home because things back home are, a little bit worse than they are here. So we're going to be paying the price. So it's going to be hard to afford UBI, and this is going to be the argument that all these dum-dums make is, oh, we can't do that, and you got to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. And nah, bitch, ain't nobody got boots, let alone straps. You guys keep taking the boots and sending the boots overseas. It's going to get messy.
Such ideas. Since no one will be working, no one will be taxed. What earned income can the federal government tax if the majority of people aren't collecting paychecks?
Everyone's going to be broke. Everyone's going to be broke unless you're rich. And when you're rich, you're not paying taxes anyway because you got teams of people that are trying to keep you from paying all the tax. That's their job. So it's not a surprise for me to see a lot of these people, a lot of Americans are leaving America, not just because of the political arguments that are happening, more that they just don't see a future here.
It could respond by heavily taxing the multimillionaires, billionaires, and corporations
They're not gonna
enriched
let that
by an
happen.
AI-powered, fully automated economy.
They're not
But
gonna
in
let that
practice,
happen.
that seems unlikely. The top marginal
Yeah.
tax rate has fallen from 92% in 1953 to just 37% in 2023, according to the Tax Policy Center. Today, anyone earning over $609,000 pays only 37% on income above that threshold, and politicians show little appetite for taxing the same wealthy donors who fund their campaigns.
Yeah.
So, in sum, a universal basic income is a non-starter. Will we redefine what counts as a job? It's hard to imagine how. Automation now threatens everyone, from blue-collar factory workers to some of the highest-paid professionals. More likely,
To lawyers, to judges, truck drivers, clerks, office clerks, researchers. Technology has been taking jobs away for a long time. Photographers, illustrators, even business leaders. If you have an idea, you don't even need a CEO anymore. You don't need, you don't need tax specialists. Yeah. This is going to be wild. This is going to be wild.
huge portion of the population will simply be left behind, forgotten by an economy and society that no longer has a place for them, despite doing everything they were supposed to do.
Exactly.
And what happens then, besides mass unemployment and poverty? First of all, a lot of the companies that got rich off of firing almost all of their human workers and replacing them with machines are going to face serious challenges. No one will have the money to buy their products and use their services. If huge employers like Amazon, Walmart, and Apple replace over 90% of their human workforce with machines.
You think that's why a lot of these rich folks are taking a look at, the Middle East? Maybe they're building hotels and they're building golf courses and stuff out there. Maybe after they do their job here, they're going to move somewhere else with money, and they're going to leave all us broke folks alone, huh? Imagine that. Imagine someone who has a lot of power and a lot of money, and then they ravage this country, and they take as much money. Maybe they get a jet. Maybe they get a handful of golf courses all around the world. So then they ravage, they rape and pillage this country. And then at the end of their term, they just go and disappear. They go play golf in Saudi Arabia, in Qatar.
Who is going to buy books off of Amazon, or clothes, or toys, or an iPhone? And history has shown that a generation of poor, angry young people with no future and few elites becoming trillionaires rarely ends well for anyone. While the US might be running out of jobs, some people are making their exits unforgettable. Check out most epic ways people quit their jobs.
Yeah, that's what Infographics Show has to say about jobs. And it's unfortunate because, so look, Black and brown people have been talking about social mistreatment. No one believed us. We've been talking about scarcity of jobs. No one believed us. Even if we did have a job, we got mistreated. No one believed us. Now that all the jobs are getting sent out and all this stuff, and no one believed us. The education system is broken and it doesn't work. No one believed us. And now we're here. And you guys keep voting for folks that just don't have your best interest. They have their own interest. They don't care about your education. They don't care about educating your kids. They don't care about whether or not you make it. And y'all, some of you guys keep voting for this. We'll see how this plays out. I think there's going to be a whole bunch of hungry folks, and I hope that it doesn't get as bad as I think it will, but I think it will. I think this AI thing, there's so many people afraid of AI, and outsourcing and all this stuff. And doesn't matter how long people have been talking about jobs and we don't make anything and there's no jobs and you keep exporting jobs and all this stuff, and people just keep ignoring, the rich people keep ignoring you. It's not a black and white thing. You guys need to get away from that. It's not a black and white thing. This is the haves and have-nots. And the haves have devastated this country. We have the potential to educate our people, to feed our kids, to do all these things, and to make the country a wonderful place for its citizens. But instead, we have a bunch of folks that are greedy and that continue to just take and take and take and take. And this is what it looks like when you win. This is what it looks like when you win the game. The country is falling apart and everyone is saying, this is the demise of America, the American dream, and all that stuff. What we gonna do? Anyway, I hope you liked this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Share it with each and every one of your friends. And if you want to come hang out with me and watch videos while I work on creative projects, hit that subscribe button. Then the little alert button, change that bell so it says all. That way, every time I come out with something new, you'll be alerted. Don't forget to go to coconutjustice.com to get you some dope gear. And with that, I'm out.
Coconut Justice.